Welcome to my channel on the best of fantasy. Today I'll be sharing my thoughts on One Piece, specifically the East Blue Saga, which is chapters 1 through 100 of the series by Eiichiro Oda. And I probably did not pronounce that name correctly, but I'll be referring to the mangaka as Oda from here on out. This will be at first spoiler free as I discuss my general thoughts and my feelings about the themes and characters, but then I'll get into some spoilers later on. I'll give a fair warning, though, as I discuss some of the specifics about the characters and what I enjoyed about them. So just a little bit about me first, in case you're new to the channel. I am an English professor and I have a background in medieval studies. But also, obviously, since I have a channel here on YouTube about fantasy, I love fantasy. And a lot of my friends urged me to try manga, the people that I've gotten to know here on this platform, as another way to enjoy storytelling. Now, I did read comics, American comics as a kid, Marvel and DC and that sort of thing. I also read some European comics like Tintin and Asterix. So I was certainly open to the idea of storytelling in this sort of form. I realized that manga is not exactly the same as American comics, but there are some important similarities. But I did not actually start reading manga until I had a conversation with my friend Murphy Napier, who started me off with Vinland Saga, which is a natural fit for someone like me, being someone who is deeply interested in Old Norse and Vikings and that sort of thing. Had a great time with that series, and then read what would become my favorite series in manga so far, which is Vagabond. I just love the storytelling there and the incorporation of theme, some really deep and moving stuff in that series. So I was quickly getting to realize that there's some great storytelling in manga. We also read Monster together and To Your Eternity and Descending Stories, and there were virtues to all of these series. Some things I didn't like so much. The humor often did not land with me. So I was kind of wondering, I did seem to like the shonen that I had read, but I wasn't really sure if I was going to enjoy the seinen, which of course One Piece is probably the most famous example of. And so I was a bit wary, let's say, coming into One Piece. Would I enjoy this series, which on the surface looks to be all about humor? And spoiler, yes, I did enjoy this arc, at least, this saga, the East Blue Saga. It was really a lot of fun. And I will say that the humor is a big part of it, and that's wonderful. It is, like the rest of the storytelling here, quite hyperbolic. There is body humor in here. There is also a lot of very clever wordplay, which I'm amazed at how well the wordplay translates from Japanese to English. So my hat's off to the translator and of course to Oda for creating such clever humor in here. There's just a broad range. There's also a lot of allusions to other stories. Many I'm sure are going over my head because they may be from other manga. But I recognize a lot of some Western stories in there as well, like Pinocchio and some folk tales and stuff like that. Zorro. There's some nice little nods here and there. Sometimes they're very subtle, and sometimes not so subtle. But that is a really wonderful thing that you have such a broad range of humor. So if that is something that you think you would like and you are fine with the hyperbole, then this could be a really fun read for you, for sure. And like the best humor that I've ever encountered, it is also very endearing. One of the reasons why I found myself feeling like this series is something special is because of the humor. I was laughing a lot while reading these wonderful episodes and getting to know these characters, and that really makes the journey heartwarming in many ways. So I really loved this aspect of One Piece. And another thing that I really love about this series is how it incorporates some really wonderful themes. Not necessarily in a way that's subtle, but in a way that's powerful and meaningful and fun. Each of the characters derives meaning from a pursuit of a passion. And this is something that I find to be really important in life. In order to derive meaning from life, you often need to have some goal in front of you. And the characters that we meet in One Piece have these tremendous goals. I mean, they may not be the most realistic of goals, but they are certainly idealistic and something that the characters can run off in pursuit of. So that is really wonderful. Amidst this context of piracy and exploring the world, there's a lot of mystique and wonder to this storytelling here. When you have characters who are in pursuit of something that gives them meaning, just the chase. That's what they wake up for in the morning and they go after with everything they've got, throwing everything into this quest, the willingness to give it all. And I love that. And also often courage in the teeth of certain doom. And that is another really great thing that you see in this series. It's just these characters refuse to give up. And a concomitant theme then is morality. And what are you actually willing to give up in the quest for your passion? Each character faces tests, and sometimes there's no clear, perfect outcome either. Is it okay, for example, to harm some people in pursuit of a goal that will help another group of people? In other words, what will you give to pursue your goal? And there are themes of friendship, and they are very beautiful. I really found the found family aspect of One Piece to be quite moving, as the characters find friendship in some of the wackiest comrades, but it's the quest that brings them together. It is the quest that brings them together and their passion. And that's a beautiful thing. And so along with that, you see a lot of loyalty and sacrifice, what these characters become willing to do for each other when the chips are down. And it's really quite beautiful to see. Now, about the characters in a non-spoiler way first, and then I'm going to talk about some of the characters very specifically. But as I said, this is a very hyperbolic series in many ways. These characters are larger than life, and I think that's a great thing. The fact of the matter is you have a lot of great literature with characters that are symbolic and hyperbolic and flat. And I don't mean flat in a way that is at all negative. Flat characters are some of the best characters in literature. So there are some great writers that regularly include flat characters. Flat can mean vivid. These are vivid characters. They tend to have one aspect of their personalities that dominates them. And that's certainly true. So you meet a certain character with a certain personality trait, and that is the one thing you always think of in reference to that character. Tends to be a flat character, and that is really wonderfully handled in this series. And at the same time, there is some conflict within each of these characters and a little bit of complexity that makes them a bit more compelling at the same time. And each of these characters becomes more and more dear as you progress in their adventures. Their growing bonds and their understanding of each other adds a lot of beauty to the story, and I would say some really wonderful emotional moments as well. And there are also some great mentor figures in here that I would love to give a shout out to. I guess this will have to be the warning, though. If you have not read the series, this might be the point where you'd want to stop watching. But these are my thoughts for now, and I would urge you, if you're someone who's thinking, would I want to read this sort of thing? I would say, yeah, give it a shot. There is something magical and unique about this series. There is a reason why it is as popular as it is. And sometimes it's really hard to put your finger on that. But if it's something you feel like you might be open to, it could be a wonderful experience, I think. So I would urge you to give it a try. And so with that, let me talk a little about these characters. I was about to talk about the mentor figures. One of my favorite characters, this is spoilers now, one of my favorite characters is Shanks. He is a mentor figure for sort of the protagonist, the main character, if you will, Luffy, at least so far. And I love the idea that this is a mentor figure who makes an attempt to teach something important to our main character. Now, Luffy has his passion, but he also needs some guidance. He also needs to be told by someone like Shanks, hey, it's great you have this passion, but here are some other things to keep in mind. And a lot of that has to do with the morality aspect of this. I mentioned morality as being a driving theme. And I do feel like Luffy is on a journey of learning a certain kind of morality and when it is important to pursue your passion wholeheartedly, but also when it is important to take a step back. And let's see if he's able to learn that, because someone like Shanks is capable of saying to Luffy, hey, sometimes it's okay if somebody comes in and insults you, you don't have to fight back. You don't have to strike out. You don't have to hit that person. You can laugh it off. And that is a lesson I think that Luffy is going to take some time to sink in. But clearly, Shanks has had an important impact on Luffy in his journey. Just the symbol of the hat, the straw hat, is wonderful. It's a great touch in there. That hat becomes more and more meaningful as the series progresses. It is a symbol of Shanks and his mentorship of Luffy, how he inspires him. But it's also, I think, a symbol of the things that Luffy is after and maybe the things that he needs to learn as well. So I love that aspect of that. There are also other characters like Chef Zeph, who is a great mentor figure. One of the wonderful things about the relationships in this series is how crusty and gruff and pretend mad at each other some of these characters are, and Sanji and Chef Zeph are a great example of that. How underneath that crusty exterior there is a lot of affection. And the affection is understood in certain gestures. It doesn't need to be spelled out. It doesn't need to be said. It's there, and you see it. And you often see it in the form of a very significant sacrifice, such as when Shanks gives up an arm for Luffy, or when Chef Zeph gives up a leg for Sanji. So there are some beautiful moments of mentorship and sacrifice in there as well. Another potential mentor, I'm not sure if he's a villain yet or a mentor or what. From what I've read, he's made a brief appearance in here, is the character Mihawk, who would become potentially, I think, a mentor figure, or at least something to strive for Zoro. So that'll be an interesting one to watch. But maybe I'm lumping him in with the villains here. I don't know yet, but he's an intriguing character, certainly a very powerful and larger-than-life character at this moment. But let me talk about the crew. Let me talk about the Straw Hats, the ones who, for me, are the most important, who are at the center of the story. And one of the things I love about the storytelling is how we meet these characters, and then later on we get their backstory. That seems to be a pattern to the manga, and which is great. I love it because the backstory adds a lot of layers and makes the character more interesting, and also adds some emotional components to the story. Because when you figure out the backstory, you realize that, okay, this is why this character is this way. This is why this character has these tics. This is why this character is so eccentric. This is why this character is so sensitive around this or that sort of thing. And it's really powerful when you find out, oh, okay, this is how this poor kid got scarred. And this explains how they're so driven. So it's really wonderful. So let's talk about them individually here. So I mentioned Luffy already, and he is probably my favorite character. He's just so lovably goofy, really kind of a doofus in the best possible way, but just, incredible because of his passion. He wants to be the king of the pirates, and he is going after that, and nothing is going to stop him. And I love that. I actually love that aspect of him. I do think that he's going to have to learn when it is appropriate to step back from a situation. But I feel like he's basically a good soul, and that he is the glue that really brings the whole crew together. His insistence, no, you're going to be on my crew, it wins over everybody, actually. Nobody can stand in the way of Luffy's stubbornness. And it just makes him so endearing and such an intriguing character. I pretty much knew right away when I met Luffy that I was going to like him. When he stabbed himself in the face in order to prove that he could be a great pirate, but and actually missed his eye because he was going to give himself an eye patch or whatever. That just made me laugh. This kid, I mean, whoa. And it wasn't just the kid stabbing his face. That sounds awful, actually. It was the reaction of the pirates to the act. They were all like, whoa, what is this? Whoa, hey, kid. It was their terrified reaction of Luffy. Like, okay, this is something different here. The kid is something. And of course, the fact that he has eaten of the devil fruit, the gum tree or whatever it is. I mean, that his elasticity, great part of his character. I love it. It's ridiculous and hyperbolic and fun. And it's a great metaphor in a way, too, because of how Luffy can stretch so much. I feel like that is a very apt power for someone of his personality, his determination to have, that he really stretches himself both literally and metaphorically. to achieve his goal. So that's just wonderful. Just a beautifully realized character and at the heart of the whole thing. And of course, we meet the rest of the crew. There's Zoro, who also has a compelling backstory, but it's his relationship with Luffy that I find to be actually a lot of fun. That Zoro just kind of keeps calling Luffy an idiot, but beneath that you can see that there's a growing attachment there, that they are very loyal to each other. And of course, Zoro was initially very resistant. He's a pirate hunter. He's a bounty hunter. He catches pirates. He doesn't want to be one. And yet Luffy convinces him to join his crew just through his persistence, but also his beautiful nature as well. And Zoro's own goal of becoming the greatest swords person in the world is fantastic. It's a really compelling part of his character. And it could lead him to do some kind of unhealthy things as well, which I think is an important part of his arc. So I'm very curious to see where it leads him. And then there is Nami. This is a character who initially I wasn't quite sure what to think. I was intrigued by her character and her reticence, her reluctance to get close to the other members of the crew. And I thought there must be some kind of trauma to her backstory, but it was interesting how Oda handled her, because unlike the other characters where we got the backstory right away, we had to wait a while for Nami's backstory. And when it finally came, it was very powerful. Probably, along with Sanji's, the most powerful backstory of them. It would be hard for me to say which one was more emotionally resonant, but they both were very powerful, I found. But finding out about Nami's sacrifice, that she comes off as very selfish, as just in it for herself, as a thief, as unreliable, but the entire time she actually is sacrificing, that she is extremely reliable, that she is helping the people of her home and trying to rid them of oppression. And that is a goal that she has, where she has to hurt some people along the way. But you can see the pain that it gives her when she leaves the rest of the crew, when she abandons them. There are tears streaming down her face. I think that's just a very significant moment there that Oda is really trying to tell you something, and then you find out later on the whole backstory. My favorite Nami moment, maybe my favorite moment in the entire East Blue Saga so far, is when Nami asks Luffy for help. Because here you have a very strong person. You have a person who has become very self-reliant, has isolated herself, has built up these walls around herself in order to accomplish this really important goal, and in order not to be hurt in the process. And so that vulnerability that she finally shows is something that is not easy for her to do. And yet that is one of the most beautiful emotional moments. And of course, Luffy's response is also really just fantastic, that he would immediately give everything for his friend. I just thought that was so beautiful. And this is, of course, in reference to the part with Arlong and all of that. So yeah, that was just a wonderful moment in the story. Probably my favorite in the entire series so far, I have to say. So that was a great Nami moment. Of course, what about Usopp? I actually found myself liking and even loving Usopp more and more as the story progressed. And I could see some people perhaps being annoyed at Usopp because he tells all these lies and everything else. But when you look at his backstory, it makes a whole lot of sense. It is through his tales. You can call them lies if you want, but I prefer to call them stories. And it is through his storytelling that he makes the world tolerable. In fact, it enables him to escape for a little while. And it also is a way to help others to escape for a little while, such as his mother, such as the people around him. And this is a way that he early on learns as a young child, oh, this is how I can help people. I can tell stories. And so it's wonderful. And even though he has the Pinocchio nose and all of that, and even though he can seem like a coward and a liar, beneath that superficial read of his character, I think there's actually a lot of depth. There's a character who's trying to help people, who is compassionate, who forces himself to be brave. And I feel like that makes him actually more relatable than any of the other characters in the Straw Hat crew. Because I think if we're honest, we will all probably admit that we often have to force ourselves to be brave. In fact, there wouldn't be such a thing as courage without fear, right? I think that Usopp is a great example of overcoming your fear in order to help And it's his loyalty to his friends that basically turns him around and say, no, I'm going to do this. It's his ambition as well. Captain Usopp, right? So he wants to be worthy of the rest of the crew. And I love that. So I love seeing his character and his interactions with the others. And he has his talents too. Don't underestimate Usopp. He's got that beautiful aim, and he also makes the flag for the crew. And so that's an important contribution as well, because Luffy's Luffy's very terrible flag is not going to cut it. So yeah, Usopp is a great part of this crew, and I'm so glad he's there. And of course, let's not leave out Sanji. He is the last to join this crew, but he also has his passion. He wants to find the all blue. He also has his cooking, and that's a big part of his backstory. This is how he shows love to people, is through his cooking. And I think that's just beautiful, that when it comes to feeding people, Sanji is extremely affectionate. And it's his relationship with Chef Zeph where you really find the origins of that, where he was literally starving on the island with Chef Zeph. And in that very curmudgeonly relationship, crap geezer and all that, is actually emulating Chef Zeph in so many ways. And there is a real poignant moment when he decides to leave the Chef Zeph and company in order to accompany Luffy and his friends. But it's his quest. He needs to go out and pursue his quest. It's his moment of maturation. It's his moment of stepping outside the comfort zone into that bigger world. So they all have their quest. You have Nami wanting to map the world, Luffy become king of the pirates. You have Zoro, who is going to be the greatest swordsman. You have Usopp, who's going to become a captain, a legit pirate captain. And of course, Sanji, who is going to find the all blue. And they're bound together like a family. And that's just wonderful. Now, there also are the villains in here, and they are as colorful as the heroes. They are as hyperbolic. They bring in some great comedy at times. And they also are obviously obstacles and tests for the members of the Straw Hat crew in order for them to grow, in order for them to progress. And particularly with a character like Mihawk, you can see with Zoro how far he has to go when he has that battle with Mihawk. Not even a battle, it was really just Mihawk sort of brushing off Zoro. So yeah, they perform in a very important function as well. But there's some great humor involved, and they're silly and they're ridiculous. And some of them, I'm beginning to find out, have their own devil fruit. So you have Buggy with his detachable parts, and you have Alvida, who is slippery, I guess, and also somehow became beautiful with that devil fruit. And then you have the others, like Smoker, I think, is a devil fruit guy with his smoking ability. I just barely met him, but he looks like a dangerous character. And Don Krieg and Kuro and Arlong and et cetera, et cetera. There's a catalog of crazy characters running around. Everyone eccentric, everyone hyperbolic and ridiculous and fun. And that's what this series is all about. But amidst the fun, there are some really serious, emotional, beautiful moments. So I have to say, I am enjoying myself thoroughly with One Piece so far. I'm looking forward to continuing in this saga and finding out where these characters go, meeting some new ones, and hearing from viewers like you. If you care to leave a comment, I'd love to hear your thoughts. And keeping in mind that I've only read this first arc, the East Blue Saga, but I would love to hear your thoughts on what I've discussed so far. So that is it from me for now. Until next time.